President Muhammadu Buhari has come out on the reasons for his declaration. He says majority of Nigerians want him and appreciate the works of his government. And Budget is asking the federal government to release detailed information on money spent as subsidy payment annually as disclosed by the minister. And thanks for joining in, everyone. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I'm sure Kimbaloe in Abuja, the nation's capital. Let's get straight to it tonight, everyone. The issue of fuel subsidy being paid on petroleum products has reared its ugly head yet again, and we cannot but talk about it. Last December, when the fuel scarcity was biting really hard, questions were raised over what could, of course, the fuel scarcity. In one of the explanations given by the minister then, you can make inference. Listen to him.
During this emergency period, we need to address the issue of pricing. There's a price disparity between landed costs and costs at which we're selling. The landing cost of product today is about 170, 171. The sale that we allow, the price at which we sell today is 145. So there's a disparity between the 170 and 145. What that means is that those individuals who are really there, not with an obligation like NNPC has to meet national supply, but with a commercial bent. We're also looking at the potential, for example, of whether you could theoretically respect the 145 price and have a plural pricing system. So NNPC and all its stations and all its affiliates, about 400 stations all over the country, sell at the 145 so that the subsidy regime is respected. The pricing of 145 is respected. But at the same time, the private marketers are able to bring in their product at their own cost and sell.
But then there was a revelation. The Minister of State for Petroleum, Ozekhome, said subsidy was being paid, but apparently has a new name, quote, under recovery, end of quote, and no particular amount was tied to it. The picture is getting clearer now. Ozekhome said the country now spends about 1.4 trillion naira annually on subsidy. Maybe the minister wasn't sure of the figure, so he said the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is in the best position to give the quote under recovery, end of quote, figures since they were involved in importing most of the petrol retailed in Nigeria. Still in line with that, this was what the Vice President Yemi Osinbajo just said, and I quote him now. He said, NNPC is trading in fuel. The federal government is not, at the moment, paying for any subsidy. NNPC is trading. If you are buying and selling fuel, you would have to be able to pay for it. So it is not a question of government provision for subsidy. The federal government at the moment isn't paying any subsidy. And don't forget that the way that the NNPC trades it is that in many cases, NNPC is actually giving fuel. There is 445,000 barrels of fuel. So really, what you are seeing in many cases is more or less an exchange for PMS. So at the moment, NNPC is paying the cost, end of quote. So a civil society organization, Budget, a Nigerian civil society, social enterprise is asking the federal government to release detailed information on the 1.4 trillion spent as subsidy payment annually as disclosed by the minister, and some of the issues raised and perhaps some of the information that we can also tell you from what is sketchy that we know. Budget is asking the federal government that they should come to Nigerians on what is the detail, the beneficiaries of some of these subsidy payments, and perhaps to tell us what exactly and how the government is spending the subsidy on petroleum products. Well, those are the issues. We hope to hear from Budget tonight. So we're hoping that the co-founder and the lead partner of Budget, Mr. Shonik Bine, will join us on the program at some point. But quickly, let's move into what happened today in London. President Muhammadu Buhari has explained why he declared his intentions to run for another term in office on Monday during the National Executive Committee meeting of the All Progressives Congress. The president said he declared before leaving home because Nigerians were talking too much about whether he would run or not. So he decided to break the ice. The president said today, and I quote, we have many things to focus on like security, agriculture, economy, anti-corruption, and many others. We needed to concentrate on them, and politics should not be a distraction. The majority of Nigerians appreciate what we are doing, and that is why I am recontesting. End of quote. That is a position of the president today, and he's coming out to give details on the issues of how his government is fighting Boko Haram, insecurity in some parts of the country, the issues of the economy, and he did also mention the issue about the release of the girl, the Dapchi school girl, still in the custody of the terrorists. So tonight, we're going to give some other perspectives, perhaps some of the other issues that you've not had on this matter. Don't forget, we've engaged the spokesperson of the APC on the re-election bid of President Muhammadu Buhari. Tonight, let's get the conversation started on the program tonight. I have joining me on the program a senior advocate of Nigeria, Mr. Mike Ozekhome, joins us here in the studio. Thank you so much, Mr. Ozekhome, for your time on the program.
Kimbaloge, thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's begin with the issue of fuel subsidy. The budget as an organization has said that the federal government should come forward with the details of what is spent. We understand that they had said that they will be spending about 1.4 trillion annually. And the vice president said, no, it is not the government that is paying this subsidy, it's the NNPC. It looks like deja vu, isn't it? Something that we've heard before under the Jonathan administration and became a very big scandal in the nation at the time.
What is NNPC? What is federal government? NNPC is just a department of the federal government, of the executive. And the president himself is the minister of petroleum resources. So it's the same 6.5 dozen. The same chicken and the egg. There's no difference at all. We have had this story before. In 2012, in January, the entire country was locked down, particularly Lagos and Abuja, by the Occupy Nigeria group, on the ground that the Jonathan government was carrying out fuel subsidy scam. And this government, peopled by mostly then AC and other groups that later converged together to form the APC, led this protest. In fact, Mr. President himself was in the forefront of the protest, physically, on the streets of Abuja, to say there is nothing like subsidy, that what is going on is just that some fat cows, some Nigerians, were feeding on the sweat and the blood.
But it turned out to be some truth, because at the end of the day, we did discover that there's some fraud in the subsidy regime at the time.
The question is what has happened. That time, the government told us by May 2016 that we are going to remove fuel subsidy, that there was no need for the government to pay for any fuel subsidy. Now, the country went within. That time, the government was still very fresh, barely 1 year old, and they were saying, yes, let us give them the benefit of the doubt. Since you say we cannot have fuel subsidy, fine. But as at last week, we had the shocking news that the government has been secretly spending 1.6 trillion naira annually on so-called fuel subsidy. Question.
Budget is telling us is 1.4 trillion.
Wow, 1.4, 1.6, even if it is 1 trillion. How much was it under Jonathan? So the question is, how did this fuel subsidy suddenly come up again? Where was this money appropriated? By which National Assembly? Because it was not reflected in the budget, because we are told that there was no longer any subsidy. It had been removed. So we are seeing Professor Pella's abracadabra magic. The more you look, the less you see.
But the government has come out to say, look, we are paying this subsidy, the landing cost and what we can sell to, or what Nigerians are buying, and what Nigerians can afford at the moment, and all of these explanations.
Yeah, what was the argument?
What
was the argument in 2012?
Budget is explaining specifically. The argument in 2012 was that the monies on the subsidy are going into individual pockets.
To individual pockets, right?
But this time around, what budget is asking, we cannot confirm whether this money...
At least we knew the individuals who were importing, right, that time, whose pocket the money was going to. Right now, who are the ghosts, who are the apparitions that the money is going to? We don't even know the companies. The situation is now more ghostly. These are apparitions. We don't even know who is taking what and how much. It's the money of the country, for God's sake. We don't run government in an opaque manner. A government must be responsible and transparent and accountable to the people of Nigeria.
Mr.
So if we could fight Jonathan government over this first subsidy, today the situation is even worse. We don't even know how much is spent. We don't know who it is being paid to. We don't know who has approved the spending. Under Section 162 of the Constitution, any money that is appropriated by the federal government as income must go into a federation account. And you cannot spend except through that section. And it must be appropriated by the National Assembly.